Yeah,
Do you mean you've never had a Radox bath?
Well, let me tell
Let
you.
me tell you something. If you use code Lulu, you get 10% off at your local Coles.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Queerie. So today we are joined by some very, very exciting guests. We are so honoured to have them on the podcast today.
We have one of Brisbane's most iconic duos, I would argue.
Not
Lulu
just
and-
one of the most iconic.
okay,
Don't
sorry.
be careful.
The most iconic Brisbane duo, Lulu and Elle.
Hi, everybody. Hello.
Hello.
We're very excited.
Thank you for having us.
That's okay.
Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, we're very excited. We have some questions.
Yes,
As
to
per
get the
usual.
ball rolling.
Do you wanna take us?
Yeah,
away?
definitely. So first of all, just starting out, what are your pronouns and what names do you go by and when?
So out of drag, my name's Adam and I prefer he, him, but I'm kind of not too fussed really. Like if someone wants to call me girl as a form of endearment, I'm totally fine with that. But when I'm in drag, I like to live the full fantasy. So she, her in drag.
Good.
Perfect. And right now I'm Jacob, but I'm happy to go by Lulu. In drag, my name's Lulu Lemans, and pronouns I'm not too fussed with. As long as you're calling me something, I'm happy. I love the attention. It's fine.
Anything.
It's fine. I get it. I get lots of other things as well.
Oh,
Yeah.
go.
Amazing. So how did each of you get into drag? And do you have, are your experiences different or?
So I guess I kind of started off the process. So we were dating at the time when we started. So I was invited to, this party hasn't aged very well. I was invited to a cross-dressing party. So
Yep.
Cancel her.
yeah, it wasn't my party. It was just a theme. I think it was like a friend's 21st.
Yeah.
And so like guys dress up as girls, girls dress up as guys, which again hasn't aged very well. But being like the little kind of like, I just moved out of home at that point as well, so I was kind of like starting to experiment with my queerness a little bit more, like starting to like look at makeup and stuff. So I was like, I'm gonna like fully commit to this. At the time, I thought I was fully committing. I was like, I'm gonna buy an expensive wig, which at the time was like I think 80 Australian dollars, and like I spent $800 on a wig the other day. So like really not that expensive.
Wow.
But I thought I was going all out, so I like got myself a wig. Jacob knew a little bit more about makeup than me, so he was like giving me some like initial tips on like how to draw an eyebrow, because I like knew nothing, like apart from like watching my mum do her makeup. Literally had never actually put any product on my face myself.
And he still doesn't. Barely there. just an eyelash.
Just woke up like that.
Yeah, I think, that's kind of where I came into it. So Adam went to this party, looked great, loved it so much, and then he came home and was like, oh my God, I love this so much. I'm going to start practicing makeup at home. I'm really interested in drag now. And which was interesting because he had never really liked drag at all, and then all of a sudden was just in love with it, and I always quite liked it. So I was like, oh, amazing, that's really cool. I'll keep giving you some tips and show you how to get what I know onto your face. And then after about the third or fourth time he'd practiced, he started to get really annoyed at me giving him any kind of feedback. And
I'm amazing now. I've got it down.
Like, I've done it like 2 more times than you, Jacob.
Looks
so,
like an absolute gremlin. And it's like,
yeah, the first time wasn't too bad because it was just like a little bit of like lipsticks and like soft eyeshadow.
Basic.
But I got a bit experimental after that. I was like, we're gonna block these brows down and have like a giant arch and
What
contour
year
my
was
nose.
this?
And
2015.
That's fair. That was the
okay.
time
Yeah.
for the big eyebrows.
It was a lot.
It was bad.
But so it looked like a gremlin and was like, well, I've done this like 3 or 4 times now. I don't think you need to give me so much feedback. Like it's a bit much. I'm just trying to learn. And I was like, okay, well, no worries. I'll show you how it's done. I'll go buy myself some makeup and we'll get into drag. I had the house to myself at my parents' house one night. And then we sat there and I was like, oh, it's just so I can show you that I know what I'm doing as well. And then I did look better, but we did it. We did the makeup together. And then all of a sudden I put on the very expensive wig that Adam had bought. And I looked at myself in the mirror and I was like, oh no. I was like, this is going to become an issue now. I can tell this is going to turn into something.
Funny.
So then the journey to becoming Lulu and Elle kind of kicked off after that because I loved it. He loved it. Then I went and actually invested some money into makeup. It wasn't just the like $3 black eyeshadow from Big W. And we spent ages. I think we spent a disproportionate amount of time practicing at home before we ever came out on the scene.
I think it was like a solid 2 years between us actually like
Wow.
starting to play around with makeup and actually physically going out in the public, like in drag.
Yeah.
It wasn't like full time. We weren't like
Yeah,
Monday
like
to Friday, like get that eyebrow on.
Let's put the look
Did you
on.
have many friends who like were in that as well? So you learned from them or no?
No.
Just
A lot of
YouTube?
we kind of
like-
our like early 20s was like very much that kind of like YouTuber influencer period.
Yeah.
That's
So
what I
like
was
so
thinking,
many
yeah.
like Nikki tutorials.
I was gonna say,
videos
yeah.
and
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
Our actual drag mum is Nikki Tutorials.
Love.
So good. So good.
yeah, we often call ourselves drag orphans actually. Like we do have a drag
yeah.
mama now who's kind of picked us up after we kind of became like started performing a bit, but like we literally started just from like our own experiment.
We had to raise ourselves.
to raise ourselves.
Very tough story. But yeah, no. So we practiced for ages at home, and then one day I was sitting there at work, and I'd had a really bad day in my corporate job, and I was like, stuff this. I'm not doing any more work. I'm gonna get on Boohoo Tall, obviously.
Yeah, it has to be Boohoo Tall.
Had to get on the Boohoo
Is that
Tall.
a thing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
It's
it's
for
really
like
handy.
women
That's a
over like
thing.
6 foot. They have like
Wow.
longer styles and cuts and everything.
Yes. And naturally,
Interesting.
being 2 women over 6 foot, we had
It's
to do
necessary.
so.
I want boohoo short.
Yeah.
Because
Surely that's a thing, it
everything's
has to
too
be.
long. Like my jeans right now are cuffed.
Well,
If
there
I have
probably
them, they're
is.
okay, I'm gonna look.
There probably is.
I'm gonna look.
I'm not. Well, shout out to Boohoo. Sponsor the podcast.
Sponsor us, please.
I'm here to talk to you about Boohoo Tall. No, so we went on to Boohoo. I went on to Boohoo Tall and I bought myself these disco pants and this like rainbow outfit. And then I was like, this is fun. So I then bought myself 2 proper wigs and messaged Adam, and I was like, oh, which ginger wig do you want? Because he wanted to be a ginger. And then got the 3 wigs, and I said, okay, we're just gonna go out for Pride. We've been practicing for so long, we may as well actually go out in the end of 2018. So it was ages actually. So end of 2018, bought all the stuff, and then I was like, we're just gonna go out for Pride and just experiment, and it'll be fun, and then that'll be it. We'll be our cravings will be satisfied, and then
It was quite the opposite.
it was the opposite. Yeah, we just
It
was
just invigorated it more.
starving after that. So then, yeah, we went out, and lots of people, like all the young kids and everyone, because it was Pride, were like, oh my God, you guys look like princesses. Let's get photos together. I looked like a streetwalker, but it was fine. Nothing has changed. But we took all those photos and then got home, and then that was it. Like, we just took off from there.
Yeah. So you just kept working on it from there and started doing actual gigs.
Yeah, so that took a while actually. So when we first started, the scene now, even though it's only been a couple of years, in that time the amount of opportunities have increased so much, which is really, really lovely to see. But when we started, we probably went out for 6 months before we had any kind of foot on a stage.
So yeah, before we even got on a stage, it was just kind of a lot of. Obviously, there's not really any kind of normal process with starting drag, so it's just about kind of like doling up and doing and like meeting people, like getting to know like venue managers and other drag queens, and
Yeah.
just kind of like getting your
Connections
foot
and
in the door
stuff.
somewhere.
Does drag have like auditions?
That was the thing. We had this perception that we were going to have to stand in front of like DJ
panel
Harry
or
Kay
something.
and be like,
Yeah.
here's our fluffy show. Do you want us? Like, and it's weird. He makes us do that. No, he doesn't know. That's what happens. No, but it was more, I think what happens is there's kind of a hierarchy in terms of like who performs where and what gigs and stuff there are. Like the big shows with the big audiences, the most seasoned queens or the most, they've got the most to offer at the moment, whatever. So when it all started, I think what happened was we started to meet people just going out and saying hi to people who were like working the clubs at the time. I remember like we met BB Gunn really early on. We met Tina Bicky and Chocolate Box and all these kind of queens who are icons of the scene, and they were all really friendly to us when we first came out. Most of them were. Those 3 were really friendly to us when we first came out. And then they were like, oh, you need to speak to so-and-so who's going to be running this like baby drag queen event. And then all of a sudden, this little event popped up called Work at Wednesdays, which was a like open stage amateur drag night where you could come along and they had like a $50 prize. And that was our kind of gateway to going in. So we showed up and watched the first one. We were there for Beverly Kills' first ever performance in the crowd.
Stop.
Yeah. She still looks the same. But we watched her first ever performance, and we don't have to cut that. Please include that.
We'll keep
Can't
it.
stand her. No. So we watched her first show, and that was really inspiring. She did such an amazing job, and like a star was born. And then we thought, okay, we can do this. So then a couple went by, and then we decided to get up on a stage and do our own. And then
Together?
we originally did separate ones, and then did our first duo performance together a couple of weeks after that. But basically through that unpaid gig, some people saw us and were like, oh, you should come and do this show. You can come and do a guest spot, and you just start to work your way up.
Yeah.
So
It's quite a lot drawn out journey there. Like I think we started like that first time we went out in drag for the Pride March was September 2018, and then I think we first hopped on a stage not until like April the next year. So a fair few months of just kind of like going out in drag, and then didn't actually get a paid gig until around like September, the end of that year. So quite like
pretty much 12 months.
a lot of hustling. A lot of money like spent on drag initially as well. Like obviously like there's so many foundation garments you need to get, like all the like the padding and everything, and the shoes and the wigs. So it was like initially quite a big
investment.
investment before you can
And
actually
honing
start to see
skills
anything start
and
coming back in.
everything,
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh.
One thing that was always really important to the two of us as well, which made it probably a longer journey, is that we're both firm believers that first impressions matter.
Yeah.
So we could have gone, you know, figuratively speaking, balls to the wall and just jumped out and just pushed really early on. But we both thought, you know what, I think we both have like a really refined eye for what we want to look like and detail and how we want to perform and stuff. So, and not that some people don't have that, but we were like, it's really important to us that we're always presented really well, or what we thought was really well at the time.
Yeah.
So we kind of held ourselves back a little bit until we were confident enough to be able to operate at the standard, which means that people had this impression that we came out fantastic because that was all they ever got to see was like
Right.
us
Get
really
to
It was
Fine.
actually
Thing.
because everything before that was just behind closed doors.
Yeah. Bedroom queens.
Yeah,
That's so many
literally.
people, right? When they say like overnight success, and it's like no.
Actually, no, there was,
it
like, so much
5
work
years
going
of
into
shit
it.
before that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
to lead up.
Exactly.
When we first started going out in drag, though, like it was only like we would probably only go out physically in drag like once a month. And it seems so funny now. We would, after we'd go out, we would like immediately start planning like the next look. Like it would take us like a month to like curate
back
an
on Boohoo
outfit.
Tool.
Get back on Boohoo Tool, like learn how to like
Gotta wait for
style
the
a
order.
wig, which is so funny because we get ready
Just
for
create
gigs in
delivery.
like a day now. And it's just so
Yeah.
funny to think we spent like
well-
a month curating it before.
Yeah. Even like you've both been in the Starlet competition, which is like a week to week thing. Like you don't
Yeah,
find
a week
out.
turnaround.
Yeah, which is crazy. And like even the looks that you guys have pulled out in that time, like you're Princess Diana. I remember
Iconic.
I remember so clearly that moment of like you coming out and there was just like you could hear a pin drop. There was like silence and then like a big everyone just went like
Yeah.
and then like chaos.
Yeah,
It was
that
like
moment when people
the
like realize what's going on.
yeah,
It's just like,
the most camp thing I have ever witnessed.
Oh,
like,
thank you.
So good. So good.
I like I knew so because the Starlet competition had run before, and we knew that there was like a royal theme that Harry loved to use, the
Right.
event producer Harry Kay. So we were like, okay, what can I do? So I was talking to my friend Savannah, who made the costume, and I mean, I like to take the credit for being Princess Diana, but I would not have been Princess Diana if she didn't have that like labor of love for like 3 days beforehand, because we literally only had a week to do it.
Yeah.
So I was talking to her long before we knew what was happening, and I made the joke because I had, for another act that I do, I have like this, this is inappropriate, but I have this little black Mercedes car
I've seen it.
that I do
I have
another
seen
act
it,
in.
yeah.
And I said, could you imagine if for the royal family one, I just came out as Diana in the Mercedes? And I was like, oh no, we can't do that. That's inappropriate. And would have been funny, but maybe only for Halloween. But anyway, I said to her, I was like, okay, let's take it up to somewhere that's maybe a little bit less inappropriate. And why don't we do the wedding dress? And she said, oh, that's a lot. It's quite an iconic outfit. I was like,
Yeah.
I know, I'm an iconic person. We
Yeah.
can do that. And I said, do you think you could do it? And she made the biggest mistake of her life by saying yes that day,
Yeah,
because she was
yeah.
like, I think we could do it, but I doubt, the royal theme won't happen 2 years in a row. And then surely enough, I find out I've got a week turnaround and I had royal family as my theme. And I was like, well, Savannah,
There we go.
time to go get some white
What?
fabric. But there was actually, so the one fun fact, trivia about my Princess Diana costume is that the train that was attached to me was actually still on a bolt of fabric.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it was 40 meters long. So hers was only 24 feet long. But because I didn't know how long
It was
I
gonna
needed
take
to get
to-
onto the stage and
Yeah.
everything, I was like, let's just put 40 meters on there.
Yeah.
So I think I think it's going to be a long time before somebody has more fabric in a dress than that.
I remember that morning I went to brunch and I saw you walk in with this massive
with the
thing of fabric and I
didn't
was
know you
like,
were there.
what's going on?
Yeah, we
What
literally
is
had
about
to do
happen?
a rehearsal that morning of how we would like unroll this giant bolt
Yeah,
of fabric.
yeah.
Because
I
we ended
was-
up having to like drape it like down the front of the stairs so
Yeah,
people could
'cause it
actually
was-
see the train and
yeah.
not be
Yeah, I was like standing against like the cloudline windows looking in like, what's about to happen?
what are
I,
these
I
queers
wanna
doing on
know.
a Sunday morning?
And then I was there. I remember it was like the craziest day of my life because I went to brunch and I got smashed. And then
As
I
you do.
went home and just like laid flat on my back and took a nap and then got up and just walked out the door and went back to Starlet that night.
I
Like,
did the
didn't
exact same
change,
thing
like-
that day. I did the exact same thing.
It was crazy.
That was so I was really unhappy with the performance I had done that night. It was not my best. And then when I got a chance to do that runway, I was so like not in the headspace of what I was about to do.
Yeah.
And then the second, like you said, the second I stepped out there and I had Diana's wedding song was the
Yes,
runway music.
yeah.
So I took like 3 steps down the stairs and it was like a wall of screaming.
Yes.
People were so excited.
It was
And
insane.
my mood changed instantly.
Oh,
I was
yeah.
so happy. But we didn't really account for the fact, because there was so much fabric, we cheaped out in some ways. So the veil that I used was like really, really cheap tulle. It was like the cheapest you could find, which means that the holes in it, it's like not delicate at all. So it's very small holes, which means it's a lot of white fabric.
Yeah.
So when I stepped out, the white spotlight, so keeping in mind for those listening who don't know, it's a staircase. The runway is a staircase. So I stepped out in like 100 meters of fabric with the veil on. And then the spotlight had essentially just created like a complete whiteout. It was like I was in a blizzard. So I could not see. I could hear everyone screaming. So I had
towards the screen.
yeah, just follow the screams. So I was like literally under the dress. I had like my feet. I was like reaching down and tapping the next step
my
and then
God.
stepping and then reaching down and tapping. But the best part is in the video, I'm just like, oh, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm Princess Diana. You can't even tell.
In your
But
head,
then
you're, like,
inside I was
pure panic.
screaming. It was so scary.
out.
But no, that was
The
truly
things you do.
the things you do.
Suffer for your art.
Yes.
And I did, but it was so good. That was like one of my favorite things
so
I've done.
Good. It was so good. And then the black dress underneath.
Oh yes, the revenge
Oh,
dress. A bit of
just
a reveal.
everything.
Thank you. Yeah, no, that was fun. But that was a classic example of our ambition being way beyond where it should have been. But yeah, that's the sort of stuff. And we like to create moments, you know.
Yeah.
Yes.
Exactly.
So
The
when
things
did
people
you
remember.
you both choose your names? Like, how did that kind of come about when you first started? Did they come really early or later on?
Similar to like everything else of our drag, it was like not an overnight thing. Very well like considered, like in those like, well, I mean, we had a lot of time to think about it, all those kind of like those few years at home, just like practicing makeup. I had a few contenders that never really saw the
Like
light of
what?
day, some really quite bad ones. So my boy name is Adam. So I was like, I was so hung up on like using Madam as part of my drag name for ages. Cause I was like, it
quite
sounds like
camp.
Adam.
Yeah,
I
fair.
thought it was camp. Yeah. But like, it wasn't sounding, it sounds very matronly, like Madam. And I was like, maybe like Madam Closet or something, because I'm coming out of the closet. And then one of my favorite photographers at the time was David LaChapelle. And I was like, maybe I'll be Madame LaChapelle. It was just all way too much. And I wasn't vibing it at all. And what were some other contenders?
We had lots of Ella something.
Yeah. So if I was going to be a little girl when I was born, one of my mum's names she was going to call me was Eleanor. So I got really stuck on, like, what was it? Oh, Elevator was one I was going to be called, like Elevator. Again, really cringe. Really quite cringe.
No offense to the 3 elevators out there in the
Oh, yes.
in
Can
the
we cut
world.
that out? Is there actually?
Yes.
I mean, it's a great track.
you didn't choose
I mean,
it,
it
sorry.
wasn't right for me. But
Yeah, when you
I
said
think-
cringe, you just meant taken. Like that.
Yeah,
was
exactly.
you
That's
slip
what
of
I
the
meant.
tongue.
Synonymous. It's fine.
Oopsie
Context.
daisy.
I don't know. I think when you like have the right name, it does kind of. It's not like maybe that could work. It's like, yes, that's
the
it.
one.
Know it.
That's it. And so I got stuck on the use of like Elle or like Eleanor. And then I started thinking about my brand and like I like a lot of florals and I love like a lot of French fashion as well. And I just think France in general is like beautiful country. And I just wanted to somehow incorporate a French element in there, which is where the DE came from. So like,
you
because
did
that means,
well.
so then it kind of just turned into maybe I could make it a pun, and then it just kind of all flowed together, and it was like I had all these light bulb moments in my head, and I was like, Elle Deflower. What if my first name is Elle and my last name is Deflower? and then it was just like it was perfect, and I was like, yeah, sold, signed.
That's the one. Yeah.
Except this is now an official PSA to anybody who thinks your name is Elder. It is definitely just Elle.
Elle.
Who thinks that?
We'll say that once the microphone's off, but there are several people who are like, "Hey, Elder." I'm like, no.
I don't mind. It sounds kind of cute and endearing, though. I don't
Yeah,
mind
if you were
Elle.
70. Yeah, no. So for mine, I had the same thing, some really terrible ideas at first.
Yeah.
But then, so at the
Lana
time,
Del Gay, one of them.
wait, yeah, we're moving on. One of the things that I was really into at the time. So we lived in Newstead at the time, and we were surrounded by like influencers, and all of our friends were desperate to be influencers and stuff like that. So obviously like activewear and all that sort of stuff was such a big thing at the time.
Yeah.
And I remember joking with my friend who I used to walk home from work from the city to Newstead. So it was like a 5K walk, and we do it every single time. And she would joke that she was putting her Lulu Lemon on, and I was like going to put my Lulu Lemans on, like my activewear, whatever. And I was like,
Wait.
one day I was literally just like, hang on a minute. I was like, that's actually quite funny being like a drag queen.
Yeah.
And then a double pun on it as well. So my family business, dad's always been around race cars and stuff. And there's like this really famous race over in Europe, which is like the 24 Hours of Le Mans, which is like a city in France. And that I was like, I can use that, and I will know that it's like a little nod to like my family and all that kind of stuff. But most other people will just get the activewear reference and whatever.
Yeah.
So, and it made it sound French and fancy. So
Which
I
worked
kept
well
it.
with my name as well. It kind of made
the
us
two of us
sound like
together.
drag siblings.
So, and I also really liked the name Lulu as like a first name, because there's no Lulus in Brisbane, or there's very...
Not gonna lie, that was my nickname my whole life, because I'm Louise, so it was always Lou or Lulu. So I'm
That's
like, that
a
would be my
beautiful
drag name
name.
too, actually.
It's a beautiful name.
She's coming for your gig.
Yeah, she is.
Well, you're more than welcome to try. But we
I don't think I want to. Too much pressure.
But we just put the two together, and I was like, it's Lulu Lemans. There we go. She's French and fancy, and it's really easy to explain it to people now, because I'm like, I'll just think the activewear, but with like multiple men in it, and then they're like, oh, what do you mean? I was like, you'll get it. You'll figure it out.
I love that. So your aesthetics and styles are quite different from each other. So how did that go when you guys started working together as a pair to like keep them from sort of, I guess, like merging or like becoming very similar?
I think a really like positive trait to have with drag and any kind of performance really is to kind of be versatile as a performer.
Yeah.
I think branding is really important, and to kind of have a signature thing that you do. Like for me, like I love the whole like 50s pinup kind of thing. I love to have ginger hair. Like that's how I see Elle when I see her in my head. But I think it's also really important to realize that this isn't just about me. This is also about the audience as well. And I think sometimes you just need to like step away from your comfort zone and show something else off. So, for example, when I work with Lulu, the gig that we do together most often is Fluffy, which is like a kind of like cool queer nightclub environment. And so when we do that gig, I kind of take a bit of a step away from like my traditional, like very like corseted, like vintage proper Elle, and I try and do more of like a kind of cool girl.
Yeah. So it's Fluffy more, like really club environment.
Yes.
Like
Yeah.
big songs and.
So I think that works well, because that's when both of us can kind of take a step away from what we normally do and kind of present a brand that is works better together, if that makes sense. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. I think, it is really important to be versatile. And I think that the two of us have like our own unique perspective on it without working together. But then I think by working together, we also get a chance to, I don't think we're necessarily going away from our brand, but we're building on our brand is how I like to look at it. So both of us always have wanted to do a bit of like the nightclub environment. It tends to be a little bit more like sexy and a little bit more dancey and a little bit that kind of vibe that they want from the performers. Like all the songs are all that sort of song anyway. So it means that we can showcase that side of ourselves and build on our brand, as opposed to, pretending to be somebody else. And that's one thing that I find really rewarding as well, is because it is kind of, you're opening a new door, you get to find out a whole bunch of stuff that's behind there. So in terms of working together and making sure that they don't blend too much and stuff, I think the way that we get through that is that we both have a really keen eye for design and inspiration and stuff. So we gather references together, and we pick songs together that we both really like, and bring it together into something that is going to suit both of us. So
I think as well, because we are like drag siblings and we started together, there are a lot of things that we do kind of
common.
There's like a lot of common ground there. Like even though we ended up going in quite different directions with our kind of like our general aesthetic and our brand, like there are still definitely some shared interests there. So we just try and draw upon that, I think.
Yeah, we talked about that, I think, with Coco, about how no art is truly original anymore. And there's like references from everywhere. And that's kind of how everything happens now. Like you pick and choose sort of what works and make it your own.
Absolutely. I think as well, because like the two of us, we've been together for 7 years, so long
Grew up in the
before Dro.
orphanage.
Yeah, we grew up in the orphanage, but like as a pair as well, we've been together for 7 years. So our perspective on the world and our perspective on the last 7 years of pop culture is very similar. So it's very easy to say, hey, what about this? What about that?
Yeah, that's so good that you have like each other to bounce off.
Absolutely.
I feel like that's so like lucky almost. Like you have someone with such similar interests to you that you're so close to, and you know, you can really just bounce off each other with everything.
Absolutely.
It's
But
really
that's
hard.
not to say it goes without its conflict points and stuff
of
as well,
course,
because obviously we both do have quite a, you know, neither of us wants to be the other person's like little sister kind of vibe. But I think it helps with our two personality types as well. So I'm more kind of like, I'll just like run straight for the gate and go for it straight away, whereas Elle's a lot more refined. So what can happen is, you know, I'll come up with a concept at first, or I might do the initial kind of design and stuff and be like, hey, this is kind of what I'm thinking. And then Adam will be like, no, that's not perfect enough. That needs to be this, that needs to be that. And then we'll pick at it together. You know, which can sometimes be a bit tense, but what happens out of that is we create something beautiful, you know, every time, because we've had a chance to build something, then mine away at it and refine it, and neither of us is afraid to put our own stamp on it, which is really important.
That's awesome. So Lulu was the SmackDown winner in 2020,
Indeed.
and Elle was a finalist.
Yes.
So how did that kind of work when, you know, you worked alongside each other that whole time and went through like a competition sort of environment together?
That's a good question. It kind of leads on from the last question a bit with how Jacob was talking about helping each other. Like, I think a lot of people see kind of like competing against each other as like a
Minefield.
conflict of interest. And there are things that are a bit difficult. Like, Jacob is quite competitive. Like, obviously when it's something you're passionate about, you really want to do well at it as well. But I think for the most part...
That was Elderflower speak for I'm also competitive. That's what that was, just in case anyone needs a translation.
Well, I am competitive, but I think you're definitely the most competitive.
Saying you're a bitch.
Yeah. That's fine. If she was winning, she'd be saying the same thing. It's fine. It's fine.
But I think what a lot of people kind of overlook or forget about is that we're in a relationship. Like, we love each other. We want to see each other succeed. So it's actually not so much a hindrance, but an advantage that we can compete alongside each other and actually kind of bounce ideas off each other. And we're not afraid to be like, this is what I'm doing. What do you think? Like, do you think this will get me through this round?
Yeah, that's
Like,
a way of looking at it.
I mean, when it comes to like the grand finale, like one of us can only be the winner, and
Hunger Games.
and you want to, I guess that's the exception to that rule, but like we both want to get to the end together.
Yeah.
So I guess it's about kind of like working together and taking over the drag world.
Yeah.
And if one of us succeed, then we're both succeeding as well. Like if one of us is, you know, completely dropping the ball, that means there's going to be less opportunities for both of us. So you want to make sure that, you know, you're helping pull each other along the whole time. I think SmackDown, because that was 2020, so that was, we just kind of come out of isolation, and our careers kind of exploded straight after that. So we were in an interesting phase of our careers at that time where we were both really desperate to make a name for ourselves. And I think we were probably a lot more competitive and a lot more desperate to put our stamp on things in 2020. So that was a very different environment for us. So we did learn, we worked together really well, and we did that, but it was definitely a lot more difficult than doing it again. Like, we did Starlet together, which is obviously like this massive competition. And that happened again this year in 2022. So we got to do that together. And before that, we sat down with each other and we said, okay, so it did get a bit tense at the end of SmackDown because we were both, you know, really keen to win. We worked together, but it was definitely not the most pleasant environment. And I was really in my head about having to win. Thank God I did. And Adam was also really in his head about making sure that he wasn't dropping the ball, because I think for me, losing is a really terrible thing to happen, and for Adam, just embarrassing himself or doing a bad job is a really terrible thing to happen. So we both had so much pressure on ourselves in 2020, whereas this time around we kind of came into this competition knowing that we've already proved ourselves to be pretty competent entertainers and capable of putting a look together and putting a show together. So we were like, we sat down and with our costume maker as well, and we said, okay, we're a team this time. Like, let's go into it as a team. You know, no secrets, cards on the table the whole time. And, you know, we created week after week, we did some really amazing stuff and stuff that we're both really proud of. And even though neither of us won the big prize, and in the end I got a little title at the end and whatever, but I don't think either of us left being like, oh, bugger, that should have been me. Yeah. And we just were like really content. I think I'm speaking for both of us, but I was really content with how we handled it and how we did.
I don't think we left any stone overturned.
Yeah. And
like
I don't know
it
if
was-
you'd agree, but I guess it's sort of thing. It's like, it's almost better than winning. Just to know that you were like together the whole way doing it. It wasn't a toxic environment. Like you can say, oh, I didn't win the big prize, but like, at least, you know, your relationship is still, you know, you've worked together. Like it's like
Exactly.
cliche,
yeah.
but that's almost like better.
And I said that to actually, like our drag mum / mentor, BB Gunn, at like the finale. I was kind of like, would finally like Kim Shot had been crowned and Lulu was runner up, and I could finally kind of like exhale and be like, okay, that chapter's over. But like I said to her, I was like, I don't actually feel that disappointed that I didn't like come home with any kind of crown, because like looking back on it, I actually wouldn't change anything. Like I loved how like we worked together, and every week I felt like I stayed like true to my brand, and yeah, it was just like a really enjoyable experience. So that was like really nice to actually be like, yeah, we didn't take out the top spot, but I'm so proud of what I did. I actually wouldn't.
Yeah,
I don't think I'd change it if I did it again. So
That's cool.
It was really nice just to get to do it together and actually showcase ourselves as like experienced queens, because we hadn't done that together before, other than doing it in like a nightclub setting. To do it at a performance in a competition is a very different level of performance, and getting to do that, there was one particular week, so it was we both in our first week came in over prepared and didn't have a huge amount of fun, and we got told off. Both of us got different weeks, but got critiqued, you know, just have some fun with it, like enjoy yourselves. And we're like, but we were so prepared. That was fun for us. We were professionals. We were ready
taking
to
this
go.
cross-dressing very seriously.
Exactly. But then the second week came around, we both just kind of like, okay, let's just let our hair
Lean
down
into
for
the
the rest
silly
of
a
That's what
bit.
people want to watch, you know. They don't
Exactly.
wanna, I mean, I guess some people want to watch the really choreographed perfect, but if they're
Exactly.
not having fun, you can
Then
see.
it's uncomfortable for everybody to be like, wow, they're taking this very seriously. But we came out the next week and I did like a Emma Wiggle strip tease, and Elle was Elastigirl and did like this
These
whole
like
thing.
silly long arms
love
that I'd
that.
made.
Yeah, but we came out and we happened to be paired in the same week that week, and we came out and we were the top two that week. We got to do the top two lip sync battle together, and it felt like a real weight off our shoulders. We were like, okay, we can do this together, and it felt like the whole scene was watching that night, and we were cream of the crop for a night, which was really, really special moment
what
to
it's all
have
about.
together. Exactly. And that I don't think we would have succeeded as much as we did if we hadn't worked together and hadn't planned the number and helped pick each other's songs and costumes and all that kind of stuff.
Absolutely.
So it was a really special moment.
I always like to say that drag takes a village. It's like you might see just the one performer on stage, but once you get to a point where you're working quite regularly, you need to have good people around you and a good team.
For sure.
And
So
it's
who's your
like-
costume designer?
Her name is Savannah Fry, and
Cool.
but she's
She
so
would
much
hate
more than
being-
that though.
She would
is
hate
like,
being called costume designer though, because she's like, I don't design, I just make.
which she does. She's designed things for herself, which are like wonderful. But Savannah's like so much more than that to us though. Like she is like such a
Uber driver.
shoulder to lean on, and like such a wonderful support. And yeah, it was really lovely. We just did the whole comp like a little trio, and
Absolutely. So yeah, Savannah makes probably 80% of the stuff that we do, but there's so many really talented artists across Brisbane who do costumes and wigs and stuff for people. So Mandy Moobs over at the Hummingbird did a bit of stuff for me as well, and there's other people like on the Gold Coast as well, like a new one that's opened up. There's just so many different people because drag has become such a big industry now.
it's a bit more accessible for people.
And it's sustaining lots of other small businesses around it. Like it's really exciting to see. Really exciting to see.
In our last episode, we talked with our guest Erica about sort of like issues with queer people in game development. Sort of more about like exclusivity and like gatekeeping by cishet men specifically. What do you guys think is the most prevalent issue, I suppose, for queer entertainers in the drag scene?
Yeah, wow. So this is quite topical at the moment as well. So whether it's the most prevalent or not, I'm not sure. But for me, an issue that's very important to me and something that I've used my platform to draw attention to recently and tried to create a bit of a stance on it is there's quite a lack of respect, especially in the nightclub scene for women in queer spaces. Straight women, queer women, trans women, all that POC women, everything. There's a lack of respect given by, unfortunately, just to put it blankly, the white gaze. So in a nightclub setting, I've had several friends tell me, they come home from night out and be like, oh, your shows were great, but, you know, I was told by this guy, you know, oh, this is a gay club, what are you doing here on the dance floor? Like, why are you taking up space? All that sort of stuff. Like, not even exaggerating things that have been said to some of my friends. And I think that attitude still prevails, unfortunately, in a lot of other queer spaces as well. And unfortunately, even some drag queens and stuff still on the microphone will be like, oh, what are the straight girls doing here? Just like, first of all, like they're here, they're paying for a ticket to see a show.
Yeah,
be a little
make
bit
up most of
grateful.
our audience.
And secondly, just assuming that somebody in a queer space is, if they're not like a man wearing a harness, is just a straight girl here at a bachelor party or something.
You
It's just
assume
exactly
that's the worst.
It's quite offensive. So for me, I think that does still prevail. Unfortunately, it is a misogynistic attitude, and that's one thing with drag in particular that I think drag can often err on the side of being a parody of women and sometimes can be a little bit misogynistic as well. And that's one thing that I think both of us have always been really conscious of, is that drag for me is like a love letter to powerful women and things like that. So, you know, growing up, I was always very inspired by powerful women and you know, a lot of all my icons, obviously, when I was growing up that I looked up to and took inspiration from were like Lady Gaga, obviously, and people like that who were really strong, and even girls in my life who I've taken inspiration from as well. So doing drag is an opportunity for me to kind of say thank you and be like, now I'm going to be the baddest bitch I can on the stage for you and for myself, obviously. But so that's something I think respecting women in queer spaces is something that is very long overdue. It should be the norm, not like it shouldn't have to be a statement. It should just be the norm. But I'd say that's probably similar in a lot of industries. So unfortunately, drag is not immune to that.
Yeah. It's interesting that you bring it up, because that is my experience constantly when I go out, and I feel like I'm quite a feminine dressing person, which like shouldn't mean anything. I shouldn't have to dress a certain way to be perceived as queer.
Yeah.
But I think because I wear, you know, like a sparkly skirt and makeup or whatever, people just assume I'm the straight girl in the club. And I get really frustrated. I had like a really long
Because you feel silenced almost.
I had like this really like long period of time where I had such an issue with being perceived as straight, and I'd get so frustrated because like I was like, that's like, these are my people and these are who I want to be around, but like they don't want me there because they don't think that I belong. And I like, it took so long for me to be like, no, but like you still can be here, like it's okay.
Absolutely.
It's so frustrating. It's so frustrating. So I'm so glad that people like you guys are aware of the way that things
Sometimes
are.
even the way that some events are marketed as well, it's pretty good in Brisbane now, but like I've seen posters for like gay nights in like Sydney that it's just like the poster's just like full of like topless like white gay men, and it's like, this is a gay club. Like as queer people, we should be letting everyone in the door.
Isn't
and
that
it
the
should
whole
be
point? Like equality and having everyone be included in that
we're
space.
trying to step away
and
from
obviously
that
it's a
kind
way
of-
to highlight, you know, a certain community, but that, you know, it should still be inclusive.
One thing I got to say when I had the microphone at Starlet was that our spaces are for the she's, the gays, and the theys. It is meant to be inclusive. Like, it is also meant to be a safe space for all of those people, whether you're a queer woman or a straight woman or anybody else who falls under that umbrella. It is our space to be exactly who we need to be without being preyed on, without being excluded, and without being made to feel uncomfortable. And I think that is what our community is supposed to stand for.
I think another thing I wanted to just like briefly touch on as well is, this is less from like the audience perspective, but actually working like as a drag queen in the scene. I think drag is hard because it's not like there is like a union for drag queens. It's not like we go to RuPaul's Wayward School for cross-dressers. Like,
You don't have
so-
is there like a HR sort of component or anything like that?
No,
Or
well,
like
there's not. No,
'cause
so
it's
a lot of
gig work.
the dynamic and the rules happen with the scene are kind of established by the people in it.
Yeah.
And something that I've kind of seen is there is often like new people kind of coming into the scene. There's often this expectation from like older queens that you kind of have to pay your dues in a way, which I do agree to some extent, but I think it's also, I don't think we should kind of discourage younger queens from kind of having a bit of passion, kind of maybe not doing
Ambition.
things what did I say?
And ambition.
Yeah. And
Yeah, you don't want to have them be intimidated to do this art form.
no, because like the thing about drag is it's for everyone. Like, yes, there are certain, you have to be respectful to like people you're working with and kind of like producers and venue managers and other queens. But I think it should be celebrated if someone wants to kind of pave their own way. Like, it shouldn't have to be that you have to do like 10 gigs for free before you can get paid, or that you have to like do a certain thing of your makeup to like be able to be accepted.
And I think it's one of those things that's a cross-section with a lot of other industries as well. Why should it be a bad thing if the next generation of performers coming along does have it easier? It means that what you've worked towards has actually succeeded.
Developed. It's
And
advanced.
And I think that happens in a lot of it. It's like the same as like the housing pricing and people
or like
like
parenting and stuff.
Exactly.
Like,
it's
always
like,
going to change.
why is it a bad thing that it is easier? You know, and that's something that I think we've always encouraged people coming through. Like, obviously, always be respectful, be on time, but be, you know, ambitious. And if you can make it work without doing the same amount of hard yards as somebody else had to do 10 years ago, then congratulations.
Absolutely, especially in the queer space.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like, what they're arbitrary rules that we've created for ourselves. Like, let's just all enjoy it and let people succeed.
Yeah. So going on from that, what would you want to see, like, some changes happening in the drag scene moving forward? What would your own
I think just looking a bit more drag it can be very like a narcissistic thing. Like at the end of the day, we're kind of like glamming ourselves up and kind of you can become quite inflated, I think, sometimes when you've got people cheering at you and you look a certain way.
It's like any entertainment industry, really, right?
Yeah, but I think just kind of remember to look outward sometimes as well, and remember that drag it's not just about the individual doing it, it's about the whole community as well. And like with what I was saying about kind of new queens coming through, not necessarily being like, oh, well, she shouldn't have the opportunity because she hasn't done this. Instead, actually reaching out to that queen and being like, I'm going to help you. Like, this is what I think you should do. Or like looking, if you see something that you have an issue with, kind of look at it as an opportunity for like guidance and support rather than just trying to like bring that person down.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And what I would like to see is way more representation, especially I think in, like I talked about earlier, the hierarchy of shows and clubs and all that sort of stuff where, you know, you earn your place in the bigger shows and stuff like that. But so I think in the kind of lower and middle levels of the gigs and stuff, which are, you know, the less frequent gigs and all that kind of stuff, I think the representation is pretty good. There's lots of really inclusive events at the moment. For example, off the top of my head, there's like an event which is run at the Wickham called Them, which is all about gender diverse individuals who are performers as well. There's a show called POC, which is Point of Change, which is all about highlighting POC talent, as two examples that come to mind. So I think in those sort of like lower levels, less frequent gigs and stuff like that, there's plenty of representation. But at the top of the tree, there's most of the big show lineups and people who are recognized at the top levels and stuff, unfortunately, are mostly are white gay men. That's not to exclude, you know, there's plenty of other very talented POC performers in Brisbane and AFAB performers as well in Brisbane. But I think that representation needs to go up, and that's something that I always want to do. If I'm ever given kind of creative control over a lineup at a show or something, I always try to make sure I'm including, and not as a token gesture, but to be like, I actually really want to highlight this person's talent, and bring them to the top. And I think in turn, like if you were to turn up to Fluffy and you saw that, you know, maybe not every single week it's just the mostly gay dancers, maybe there's a more diverse lot of dancers up there, and you know, the lineup might have an AFAB performer in there as well, and that kind of stuff. What that means is it just sends a message to everybody in the audience that this is a space for everybody. So that means that the attitudes of the performers will be different. The attitudes of the people watching the shows will be different. You'll be validated sitting there saying, oh, cool, there's you know, some of my people up on the stage. And that means that some of the people who would otherwise be exclusionary will also see that and be like, oh, okay, maybe this space is for not just me and my harness and my jock strap. You know what I mean? Like it's actually for everybody. So I would like to see a better representation across the board. And actually, interesting things happened in the last week as well, where the two of us, which we're both very grateful for, have been nominated for Drag Performer of the Year at the Queen's Ball.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much, it's such an honour, and it's the oldest queer awards ceremony in the entire world. So it's awesome. An absolute honour to be nominated. But unfortunately, the performer categories this year have a very limited lineup of people, and that was my first thought when I read it. Even like I saw my name, I was like, that's exciting. Then there were so few other names there, and I think that's just a classic example, and it's no one person's fault that it's happened, but you look at it and go, oh, you know, this is an opportunity where there's going to be thousands of people log in to vote for these awards, and there's going to be, you know, 700 very important people in the community there on the night at Brisbane City Hall who are going to get to see these talents highlighted. And it's a great opportunity for us because these people are going to see us and be like, wow, you're amazing. But I would have liked to have seen more than 4 people nominated, which traditionally there is.
It's a great opportunity to show off the diversity that Brisbane has.
Because even just being nominated, I know it's really cheesy, but just being nominated is such an honour. And even out of last year, there was a whole lot of respect that I gained because I was nominated last year as well, just by being nominated. Like people, like elders in the community got to come and say, oh, congratulations on all your work this year. And I would love to have seen some of the other amazing talents in Brisbane get a chance to experience that this year. And unfortunately the lineup is for, I believe, cis white men, as far as I'm aware. So that is unfortunate that is the extent of the representation on the Drag Performer of the Year panel, especially like I've mentioned, there is so much other talent in Brisbane that deserves that being highlighted on such a big platform as well.
Exactly.
So it's just a symptom of a bigger problem. It's not Brisbane Pride's fault solely. Like this is just the way that it has been.
And you'd hope that it's just
while.
going to keep getting better and better.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's why a lot of people, and it has been a bit of an issue on social media, I think that's why people have been a bit disappointed, is because it does feel like we are heading in the right direction.
And then these things happen and it's
Step
like,
back.
did we miss the memo?
It feels like a step back. And then when you
Yeah.
hear somebody come out of a club and say, hey, somebody said this to me, you go, oh, okay, we're taking a step
Why are
back
we
again
doing
today.
Yeah, it really just, it's like you're doing all these advancements and then why are we stepping back?
Exactly.
But I think that's like
Definitely.
anything, like you're always going to have the step backs happen and then you
Yeah.
just have to keep pushing forward. And
It's
you
like
guys
when
asked,
like
it's really
Donald Trump
cool.
was elected. I was like, really? Are we there? Are we?
Really?
How
We're back
did
in the
this happen?
1930s? Yeah.
And the thing is as well that we're queer. Like we don't like we make our own rules. We don't need to adhere to any structures that has been placed in society like before us. Like we don't have to say this person can do this and this person can't. Like there is no rules to being a queer person. Like we're all, it's an even playing field.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think like those sort of things like step backs, like you were saying, sort of just, I guess, open up a conversation.
Absolutely.
A platform to educate and go, okay, how are we going to not do this again? Or how are we going to move forward from this? But yeah, I suppose going on from that, what makes you guys most proud to be queer?
I truly, I think it's something that happens over time and you become more and more proud as time goes on. Because when you first kind of realize that you might be, fall under that rainbow umbrella, it's actually a bit scary.
Yeah.
And you think, oh no, this is something that I probably can't celebrate. And then as time goes on, you celebrate it more. And I think the best thing about being queer is that it is a never-ending journey of self-discovery, and it is a chance to continue to evolve who you are. And that is something that I think is very unique to the queer experience, because there's not really any expectations placed on the queer community in terms of how you're supposed to navigate life. Whereas, you've got those that, as a heterosexual person, I suppose there is kind of an expectation that you're going to get the job and you're going to find the partner and you're going to have the kids and you're going to buy the house and you're going to live happily ever after and follow that. Whereas with this, we kind of get to make our own timeline and we kind of get to experience life at the pace that we want to. And I think that's something that I would encourage people who aren't necessarily in the queer community to embrace that as well, because at the end of the day, even those rules that other people have to follow are still just arbitrary rules that exist to kind of confine us. So I think about being queer is that you get the chance to live out your best life without any expectations, and I think that's really beautiful.
I 100% agree with that. And it kind of links to what I was saying before about like, we're queer, we don't have to follow any kind of rules. I think as well, like one of the things I'm most proud of is kind of taking something like my femininity. I've always been a very feminine boy. Like even like when I was like a toddler, my mum was like pretty certain I was going to be gay just from like the toys I played with and like how I carried myself. So always been
And he
very...
downloaded Grindr at 4 years old. It was so weird.
She was like, yeah, I think this is
I
right.
think this might
is
be the
right,
one,
yeah.
yeah.
So like always been very effeminate, and it was something I was so self-conscious of like growing up. Like always tried to like kind of mask it, make my voice sound a bit more masculine, make sure like the way I stood was like different at school so people wouldn't know that I was queer and like pick on me. And what I love about my life now is that I've like taken something that I used to not like about myself and that other people used to bully me for and just turned it into like almost like armor and been like, actually, I'm gonna fully lean into this. I'm gonna like
That's
do it
awesome.
in a way that people celebrate it. Like it makes me emotional thinking about like that I've gone from a place where I used to be scared to put a hand on a hip, and now I can stand on like a stage and be as feminine as I want to be, and people are actually cheering for me. Like it's a really like beautiful full circle moment to come
It
from that
is.
place.
That is beautiful.
It's really nice. That's my favorite part of the episode, is asking those things. It's been so far, I think, pretty different between all of our guests. It's, I don't know. It makes me like warm and fuzzy.
Have you had a chance to answer the question yet?
I think I did in the first episode.
Yeah,
I think
first we did a Q&A.
it was,
perfect,
mine
okay.
was like unconditional love.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I grew up in a religious family, so I don't have that at home. My parents don't know I'm gay. Maybe do, maybe don't. I don't really know. And so when I stepped into a queer space and it was just everyone being like, oh my God, hey, like, cool. We're happy to be here for the most part. I mean, for those few people that aren't like, women shouldn't be here. But for the most part, it was like open arms, like, hey, come join us. And like, I've met so many amazing people through like going to all these queer events that just don't care. Like, it's just like, come do whatever you want, wear whatever you want. Just be.
Just be. Yeah.
It's like you found your people.
Yeah.
Getting a chance to like build the bubble around yourself and kind of live in this beautiful world that you get to create yourself is so amazing, because you grow up in a very heteronormative world, I suppose is the word, where everything is kind of, you're the other. And then as soon as you start to build that friendship and you get to build this whole scene around you, you realize that actually you can be, your entire universe can be gay. It can be very queer.
Sometimes I forget that like
We're not.
we're
We're the odd ones out.
heterosexuality is like the normal thing.
Well, yeah, because you're not living in that. You know, you're living in your own.
Exactly.
And
what you make.
That's so fun, and I think that's something that we got the chance to work with a bunch of high school students in November last year, and that's something that I kept reminding them all. I was like, hey, right now you feel like there's 1 in every 10 of you might be a little bit, which is fine.
A bit limp in the wrist.
Yeah, exactly. But I said, you're going to leave high school and you're going to find that you can have 10 out of 10 of you be that way, and that's going to be magical, and it will be such an improvement. I think I wish that I had a better perspective of that when I was in high school, because I was so terrified that I would not be able to enjoy my life to the fullest.
Your whole world is just school and the people around you when you're there, isn't it?
Exactly. And then that's something that I think is so important now with so much representation and media and all that kind of stuff. It just goes to show that we are taking steps in the right direction, because it is true. It does actually genuinely get so much better.
It does, yeah. Oh, well, thank you guys for coming on.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you for
It's
having
been great.
us.
I feel like we've like
Really good conversation.
Yeah.
Hope you enjoyed coming on.
Absolutely.
had
I
a
love
lovely
the sound of
time.
my own voice, so I can't wait to just listen to this on repeat.
amazing. Shall we do a little clink?
I think so.
yes.
Okay.
With my water.
Mine's very empty.
Alright.
Attendance vodka.
Okay.
Cheers.
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 Cheers.